In this lesson, we're going to talk more about the basic commands in MUDBOX. We're going to see how we can manage the objects and the scene. So if we import more objects, how we can manage them in the scene. So in the previous video, we talked about the Windows menu mainly and the hotkeys, so how we can be more efficient and speed up our work. And also the basic commands of navigation. We talk about the view queue, but also what are the shortcut keys for animation. And when we right click, we saw that we have like extra options here with the object that we are working with or the scene. So we can work with the visibility or the materials and other things that we're gonna talk about later on in the course. So in this video, we're gonna focus on adding more objects. So I'm gonna go in the create menu, and by objects here they are called mesh. Mesh is a term to define an object that is composed by polygons, and we're gonna talk about polygons and the mesh, how they're done, how we can use them also later. So right now I just want to add an extra model. So I want to use the bull. So I already have the T-Rex in the scene. I want to add a bull. Now we already saw that also when we duplicate, the objects tends to go in the perfect center of our scene, which is right there in that like yellow axis. So those yellow axes, they represent like the center of the grid or the work plane. So those are basically the Cartesian coordinates x, epsilon, and z, but we're gonna see those again later. Now we don't we're gonna skip these sculpt and paint, curve, and pose tools because these are a little bit more advanced. We're gonna go directly to the select and move tools. Now these are the selection and the transformation tools that you need to know well at the beginning. These are fundamental for you to understand everything that will come later on. So you can see you have different types of selections. You can select like things that concern UVs or like the material. You can also click on this little arrow if you want to see like some extra options on the panel that you are on. So you can see here that for each panel you will have that little arrow. It's gonna help you to have more feature, more commands about that particular panel. But we're gonna focus on these tools right now, so we don't need more. Now this one here is the basic selection. So if I use that, I can click on an object and that will be selected. And if I continue to click on more objects, those also will be selected. So every time I can go from the sculpt to select if I want to select something. But I also find really useful the object list on the right when I need to select. So you can also hold the shift key when you are selecting if you want to select more, or you can click with the control key pressed or command key if you are on Mac if you want to deselect. So one time you're going to select, click again with control is going to be deselected. But again, you will find all these like shortcut keys also in the manual, so if you get lost, and you will find it there. So if I want to select something, once it's selected, then I can edit that particular thing using the move, the rotate, and the scale, so using the transformation. And you can find all those right there in the select and move tools. You also have this kind of a ruler command, which is essentially something that will help you to measure things. So if I click on a point on one object and on the other, it's going to show me the distance. And I think that right now we are in centimeters, but we already saw how we can change the units or manage the units in the previous video. So you can see that I need to click in 2 different points. If I click somewhere else outside, it's going to like deactivate that measurement. Now, if I click on translate, well, that's the move tool essentially. So I can move objects. I can translate them into space. Now you can see those 3 arrows, they represent the 3 axes of the 3D world. So the red one is going to be the X, green one will be the epsilon, and the blue one is going to be the Z. Now in this software, the Z is oriented like on the front, but usually in 3D software, the blue axis, the Z axis will point up. So you need to be careful about orientation, especially when you import from other software. But right now we don't care about that. We're going to talk about importing later. You can see here I'm clicking on the red arrow and I'm just dragging with my left mouse, and I can move also by clicking on the blue arrow and dragging again with the left mouse. Same thing with the green arrow, which means that I'm moving things in one dimension only. If I click on the circle instead, it's gonna move in 3 dimension, but it's going to be less like manageable. So if you want to control movements, you can use the arrows. So based on how you want to move it, you can click on the red, the blue, on the or the green. Same thing for the rotation. So if I select rotate, now let's rotate the T-Rex. Of course you can rotate more objects at once, but let's keep it simple. I'm just gonna also right click if I want to deselect. So there are like a lot of ways you can select, deselect. My favorite again is from the object list, but also you can select here, and you can also go to the edit. So also here you have like delete selected if you want to delete it, or hit the delete key. And you have also like other options here like Control A or select all when we want to select everything that's in your scene. Right now it's easy because I only have 2 objects, but sometimes you have like, I don't know, like hundreds of objects. And you can also invert the selection from here. So you have again extra features, extra tools to manage the selection, or deselect all. So if you want to quickly deselect everything. And then you have other things like which are a little bit more advanced. I'm going to show you this later. And then you have the possibility to lock or freeze, which are other features that you can access with the selection. But right now let's stay on the transform. So select, rotate, and well, you also have other types of selection again. So right now we are working with the object. And if you double click instead of single click, on the right, you will see properties concerning that tool. So if you want to rotate or move using not the gizmos there in the middle, but you want to use exact parameters, you can use them on the right. Now you can see you have blue, red, and green circles to rotate either on the X, epsilon, and Z, and then you have that like outside circle. If you click on that, outside is going to rotate according to the view. If you click inside or outside that circle, that black circle is going to rotate like in every direction. So it's going to be less manageable. But every time you think you did a mistake or you want to adjust something, you can go in the parameters. So if you double click either in the translate, rotate, or scale, you can go back there and adjust everything. So you can also go back like with Control Z. So you can see I'm rotating in the epsilon right now. But if I want to set the precise measures, I can just type them with numbers inside those slots right there. So if I say 0, 0, 0, it's going to be in the perfect middle of the scene, so the perfect origin. Rotation, well, those represent X, epsilon, and Z. So if I want to rotate around the green axis, so the epsilon, I will just type there the degrees. So this time I want to use like 45. So that's going to be a precise rotation. Or I can type like 100. It's going to move it 100 units up. So it's going to be exactly 1 meter if we think that the units are centimeters. And you can continue there. You can also change the pivot. So you can center the pivot on your object. So if like accidentally the pivot is far away from your object, well, that's kind of a mistake. So you need to keep the pivot close if you want to like do a correct manipulation or transformation of the model. You can see now I've set the pivot to 0, 0, 0, which is going to be like the exact origin of the 3D world here in MUDBOX, represented by the X, epsilon, and Z dimensions. And so now you can see I can rotate, and it's kind of oriented. The pivot is oriented to the object right now. So when you center the pivot, it's going to be like centered. And now I'm scaling with 1 dimension using the color squares, or if I use the white square in the middle, that's going to be like a uniform scaling, so 3D scaling. But again, you can also like scale in 2D or only in one dimension using the parameters. Don't type 0, otherwise it's not going to be visible. You need to type at least 1 when you scale. And if you want to scale like the half, you need to use the comma. So do like 0,5 is going to be half. And of course, 2 is going to mean twice the size. 1,5 is going to be like 1 time and a half, and so on. You get the idea. And so once you get the grip on that, you will like manipulate anything really easy here in MUDBOX. Now, it's important to understand the pivot because pivot also affects the way you can rotate, scale, and move the object in the scene. So let's say that I want to change the pivot here. I want to place it like 5 meters away. Now, this is a positive direction. I want to go into negative, so like backward. So I want to add the minus sign. So you can see that the pivot now is far from the, not so far, but it's not precisely in the object. So when I rotate, you can see I have a different effect. I'm using a pivot. So every time I scale also is going to add some distance. So I scale like a little bit here and the object disappear from the scene. Now, sometimes when you import stuff from outside, we're going to make some tests later, perhaps in another video. You will see that some objects won't appear, won't be visible, but that doesn't mean that you don't have it in the scene. Could be too small, could be too big, or could be just like really far from the origin, so you cannot see it. But you can use always the object list, which again is a fabulous management tool. So there you can see if actually the object is there or not. Well, if it's there, could be a problem of the pivot. So what we could do is just center the pivot. So not make it like 0, 0, 0 or another way. Just center the pivot. Once it's centered, you can use the translate and place it back into the middle of your world or your scene. So this is one way you can, adjust. But again, you won't find any problem with objects from MUDBOX, templates objects, but we will make more example later. I also use the display menu and frame all, or you can do like A with a shortcut key. That's going to help you to frame the selected object. So whether it's visible or not visible in the display, or you can select it in the object list and then just type A, and that's going to focus on that particular object. You can also do Ctrl plus A and then A to frame all the objects that you have in the scene. So these are again selection and other commands related to the selection. And well, that's it. So we experimented a little bit with the move, the rotate, the scale tools in the select and move tools, but we're gonna briefly also check some other feature there. Now I want to add some more models just to show you that now that we get well, that's another problem there. So I just moved the wheels. So sometimes you think you imported just one model, instead you imported like more than one and separated. So make sure you select both. You can use Control or Shift click there in the object list when you want to select more than one object, or you can also like invert the selection by Control and clicking again on that in the object list, or you can select from one to the other using the Shift click. And then I move the car a little bit aside, and let's add something else here. Let's add a reptile, and again select it in the object list, move it using the transform, and that's here. You can see how easy it is then to manage a little bit more complex scene with these tools. So once you get the grip on these really basic commands of selection, transformation, and so on. Now I want to add the last one, which is going to be a trunk, well, a tree stump. And okay, so that's going to be enough just to show you some other features. So I'm going to select the T-Rex here in the middle. And well, you can also select faces. So you either select objects, faces, or borders, or UV islands, or like elements. So when you select the faces, it's gonna select only the polygons on the object. Now if you type W with the keyboard or wireframe and display wireframe, it will show you how the structure of that object is made. So it's going to show you essentially the polygons. So the more polygons you have, the more quality, the more curviness, the more smooth your object will be. So I'm going to talk about the importance of polygons later. And then you have borders, which are like open areas where like there is a missing polygon and it's not closed. And then you have these UV parts, which or shells, which are like islands. So we're going to talk again about UV later. It's about materials and textures anyway, so we're going to talk about that later. We're going to focus in the first part of the video course more on the geometry and the polygons and so on. So you can now grow the selection if you want, or Ctrl J. So now we can use some other tool here in the edit menu. You can select all borders if there are like open faces. You can select the border. You can unlock selections. So now I'm just clicking with the left mouse, by the way, just like painting the selection on the object. So it's a little bit different from selecting the whole object. If I want to paint more areas, I'm holding Shift. Click. The Shift button is in the keyboard. So if you hold the Shift key and click and drag, you're going to add to that selection again. And once you create like a selection that you want to save, you want to reuse later, you can go to create and create a selection set. So this is another like element that you can create. So I'm going to call this example 1, and now you can see it in the object list again. So if you click there, you will quickly get back that particular selection. So you don't need to waste time in reselecting those again. So you have selection sets. Let me show you again some other features related to selection. And well, let's select again the whole object. So I'm gonna change the type of selection, and now we want to lock the selected. Now when you lock an object, you cannot do anything on that. You cannot move it, you cannot even select it, you cannot do anything. Now you can also unlock all. So if you can unlock all the objects that have been locked, or you can also invert. So if you lock this again and you invert, it's gonna invert, and now I can only work on the T-Rex, not on the other models. So again, this is how you manage complex scene with the visibility, with the lock. And freeze, it's more about like a single object. So you can freeze an entire object, but you can see that you can still move it and transform it. So what's the difference between locking and freezing? Well, freeze is more used when you need to preserve the structure of an object. So it's kind of masking out things that you don't wanna deform. So if I mask, for example, this using the face selection and freeze, you can see that if I'm gonna sculpt, so let's get the sculpt tool and start sculpting on the T-Rex, you will see that on the blue area you will not change anything. So it's protecting that area. So freezing will protect or mask out some parts of your model which will not be affected by the sculpting or other deforming tools. Now let's move on and let's go. Well, we're gonna see those later, and let's go to the display because I want to show you here also the frame, but you also have like hide and show. So you can hide whatever is selected or unselected, or hide all, or show all. There you go. Or you can just show a single mesh or more than one by hiding or showing the selected. So if I do hide the selected, or H with the keyboard, it's gonna hide the selected object, and then I can do show all, or I can select it. I can also hide it from there, and then let me show you here. So I'm gonna hide the selected. I'm gonna select it there because it still be visible on the object list. This is why object list, again, it's really important to keep an eye, manage, control everything. You can see it's there, but it's not visible. That's another issue sometimes when you don't find objects. So go there and just show all or show the selected object. And what else? You have, well, the isolation. So when you isolate, everything else will be hidden except the selected object. So if you want to concentrate and focus on one model, you can do this. It's really handy. And then you have the show, which we already saw, and smooth. Now smooth is and wireframe and flat. Now let's see what are these. Now wireframe again is to show the structure in terms of polygons and faces. Flat will get rid of the shading. Smooth is going to smooth out the models because this is the actual structure of the model. So when you apply a smooth, it's going to be like an extra effect. So if you print this T-Rex with a 3D printer, it's going to look like that because those are the actual polygons. You can see this is a really low poly mesh. Now later on we will continue to add subdivisions, so add more polygons to have more detailed sculpting and modeling. But right now we can just use the smooth to have a better curvy effect. And then you can also have like hard edges and creases if you have like sharp objects. So you can either smooth or like sharpen things out. And then you have the lighting, of course. Well, light, I think it's necessary to see something in the scene. And then you have like show both sides, because like faces and polygons, they only have one side. So when you do show both sides, you can also see the polygons on the back side. And the grid. And then if you hide the meshes here, everything that it's a 3D object will be hidden. And also you can see if there are like errors in the mesh and curves. The background there, you can add a gradient or a simple flat background depending on your let's say needs or like taste. And this one here is the full screen, which is gonna like expand a little bit more. And then you have the expert mode, which is gonna like take everything off except the workspace. So you need to be like an expert here with the shortcut keys if you want to work like this. But this is excellent because you have all the space to model at your disposal. So this is it, and you can always check the shortcut keys right there. And well, we're gonna talk about other more interesting features in the next video. So subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the MUDBOX video course, but also in other video guides and video courses. And thanks for watching, and we're gonna continue in the next. And also, if you wanna give us a little thank you, a little support, you can join the channel as a supporter. And check also our other video guides, video courses that you will find in the channel. You can also write your comments, which could be like questions or also suggestions for other users and us. So thanks again, and see you in the next video.